Question of the day: how to check if your previous training sets improved your endurance? Hi everyone, Ben here from Trap Cycling. Today I'm going to share with you another way on how to determine if your previous trainings made your endurance power strong enough so that you can shift your training to improve your higher power thresholds. I'll show you examples of 3 cyclists who I am coaching. They have different goals, underwent different training plans, but they have the same endurance capabilities. Let's look at cyclist A. On Monday, he did a sweet spot training. On Tuesday, he did a sweet spot training with neuromuscular power sprints. On Wednesday, he did a tempo workout. And on Thursday, he did an active recovery ride, which is an endurance training. Now let's look at his performance on Thursday. As you can see here, he spent 90% of the time at endurance level. But looking at his heart rate stayed only at zone 2 for only 25%. Now what does this mean? This means that his muscles can produce higher power outputs without pushing his cardiovascular system to work equally hard. This is what every athlete or cyclist wants to have. Now another data that I look at is decoupling. Look at this. So you can find it here. His decoupling is negative 1.8%. Now what is decoupling? Decoupling is the computation of your power and heart rate during the first half divided by your power and heart rate during the second half of an aerobic ride or training. If the number exceeds 5%, then it means your cycling endurance needs to improve. Having 5% decoupling also means that during the second half of the aerobic ride or training, your heart needs to work harder in order for you to sustain the same amount of power during the first half. So the key here is the lower the number, the better. Let's look at cyclist B. On Monday, he did a lactate threshold training. On Tuesday, active recovery. On Wednesday, sweet spot training. And on Thursday, he did an endurance workout with 15-second sprints. Let's evaluate his performance yesterday. So looking at his activity power, he spent over 60% of the time at zone 2. Now, he also spent over 10% doing zone 3 all the way up to zone 7. But let's look at his heart rate. He only stayed at zone 2 for only 45.3% of the time. This means that his endurance is really fantastic. Now let's look at his decoupling. It showed here that it is at 0.9%, which means to say that during the remaining 50% of the ride, or the second half of the ride, his heart rate remained stable despite exerting the same amount of power. Let's look at cyclist C. On Monday, he did a lactate threshold workout. On Tuesday, neuromuscular power sprints. On Wednesday, endurance ride. And then on Thursday, he did an active recovery ride. Let's look at his performance yesterday. He spent 78.6% exerting endurance power. But his heart rate stayed only for 20.9% of the time at zone 2. Okay? Now let's look at his decoupling. His decoupling is at negative 0.3%, which means to say that during the second half of the ride, his heart rate remained stable despite exerting the same amount of power. So that's how you can validate if your training plan has helped you improve. So for more tips on training, racing, and long distance cycling, like and follow Trap Cycling page.